So this is what we're making, a left and right twisted bangle to match the ring. So we make two bangles and then solder them side by side. I like the double twisted ring enough that I'm going to make the same thing in a bangle. So you need two pieces. I'm using 2mm wire. Don't know what that is in gauge. 600 mil long, or 2 feet in the old money. So if you have shorter pieces, you can use them. It's just that it's easy to bend this in the middle to twist it. So I'm going to twist one to the right and one to the left. Make sure the metal is annealed. If you can do that easily and it stays bent, it's annealed. If not, bring it up to a dull red, quench it, pickle it, and then you'll be ready. So I'm just going to do this at the bench. Same old story. Clamp the wire in your vise. Grab the ends with your self-locking pliers. And like I said, we'll twist one of these to the right and one to the left. Nice and tight on the ends because you don't want it to come loose. And if you're twisting and you get more of a twist on one end than the other, just take it out, turn it around end for end. Do it again. Yeah, so this one is twisted to the right, and we'll twist the next one to the left. So as you're twisting your second piece, lay your first piece next to it because we want them to have the same twist, just one to the right, one to the left. When you've got that, take it out of the vise and measure the diameter of your bangle. It's going to be full circle bangle. And because this is 2mm wire, what you'll do is you'll add 4mm to the diameter multiplied by pi. Cut it to length and cut it so that the twist matches. We want it perfect. And we're going to solder these separately. You've work hardened this by twisting it, so you'll have to anneal it after you cut it. Form it just roughly by hand. Get the ends to match. Tidy up the join. Hammer it so it's round. Now you want these exactly the same size, and the reason that I'm soldering separately is I want the joins to be opposite each other. I don't want to line up the joins. So do that. I've marked the length with a texture, and what I'll do is I'll line up my second one and match it with the texture mark, because we want these as close to the same length as we can get them. So cut it before you anneal it. Cut it and file the ends flat. And we want this to be the exact size of the bangle because we're not forging this one. We're going to just leave the wire twisted. So by not forging it, we're not going to make it bigger. So make it the correct size. So you can see we'll have a little bit left to make into a slightly bigger ring. Now these aren't soldered, so they will slip around a little bit. So I don't want it to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just solder the end, one end should be enough of each one of these, and then we'll anneal it and form it. So mix up your flux, and I'm not going to do it right on the very end. I'm going to come in a little bit so that I have a little tighter place to put my solder. A little bit of flux, 2 fairly generous pieces of solder. And it doesn't really matter too much at this point because we're going to solder these side by side eventually. So there'll be a bit of solder to clean up anyway. So just nestle your solder in the wire. Crank up the heat. And any torch is good for this. Doesn't really matter. LPG, you just turn it on and crank it up. Same with acetylene and air. This is LPG and oxy with the number 7 tip. So I'm just going to warm that up until the flux dries out. Tuck the solder down in so that it's touching very nicely. Keep the flux warm as you're trying to push your solder around, and that way it's easy to move. So I'm just brushing back and forth. I'm about 50 mil away. The flux went clear, the solder flowed. That's simple. We'll do the next one. We just want to keep the wire from shifting around, which is why we're doing this. Ta-da! So normally we'd quench it and pickle it, but go ahead and anneal the whole piece. So we've annealed the piece. It should be nice and soft. You can bend it with your fingers. Bend it until the ends line up. Make it as perfect as you can. And when it is as perfect as you can get it, you can just lay it on your charcoal block to solder. You don't have to hold it in a third hand. So this one is going to take just a little bit of filing, and I know that the wire's not going to shift around because it's soldered, so I can file it and get the ends to match perfectly. I just open it just a hair, hold it on my bench pin, and using my number 2 cut file, keep it nice and flat. Check it. So just a little bit at a time until you get it perfect. So it's getting there. So flux the join, and I'm just going to do this the same way I did before. I'm just going to lay my hard solder right in where the wire's twisted. I'll shift in so you can see. So I've got a fairly big flame happening. I've got the solder right in here. Now this is a generous piece of solder because I need to solder both of these joints at the same time. Just circle your join. You want both sides of the metal to be the same temperature. So the flux has gone clear. The solder will flow shortly. So there it goes. And you shift the flame side to side, and you can see that it's a fairly decent joint already. It won't take much cleanup. So quench this, pickle it now, round it up, and tidy up your joins. Round it up on a bracelet mandrel. So make your second bangle the same way you made the first one. Round them up on the bracelet mandrel and put a mark on your mandrel if you don't have one. You can just use a texture. And it's just so that we can check to see that they're the same size. If they're not the same size, then the bracelet won't look that good. Find my mark. Do the second one, check it for size, and then they also want to be flat. We don't want it wavy. So just go on your wooden block or a wooden table, use your rawhide, tap it, get it nice and flat. So now put your joins opposite each other, and in a few places where they touch, we'll solder. And what I do is I hold it on my third hand, I'll solder a couple of places, shift it around, solder a couple more, shift it around a couple more. You don't have to solder every one. So rather than trying to hold it perfectly or wire it together, I just hung it over my third hand, and because these jaws are level, I just shifted the wires so that they're touching. We'll solder this one, then we can push the rest of the bracelet around so it touches, shift it around and do it again. At this point I've just soldered it in two places opposite each other, and what I'm going to do is, because they're slightly different sizes, I'm going to go back on the bracelet mandrel and hammer it to try to even it up. And then I'll finish soldering it in a couple of more places. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. So it's all soldered. Well, it's soldered in 4 places, north, south, east, west. So it's time to pickle it and then polish it.